be the best Hokage ever!
Believe it! What's up, my fellow ninjas? It's Project coming at you with an endgame Ninja Kunai build, the perfected form of my Uzumaki build, Hokage Uzumaki. I've tested every other possible setup, and this combination I put together was the best setup, thus is the best ninja build by far, hand down. Perfected for Way of the Wise. There's very little chance of anything being better than this. But in turn, that also makes it the hardest to perfect, since with ethereals being a pain in the neck to find the ones you want, this is a build you're going to have to work towards gradually. You can't just slap it together easily. In Gundam model terms, if old Uzumaki was a high grade, Hokage Uzumaki is a master grade. But moving on to the setup and reasonings for the setup, Kingo is out since maneuvering to the back of every enemy to do decent damage in Way of the Wise is really dangerous. Meanwhile, Scion of Virtue offers near 20% thrust damage, which affects kunai damage, so it's nearly on par with Kingo damage, except you get increased damage from anywhere, not just the back, so it's the superior set. And since full Iga is worse than those two, this setup is the best. Combined with using all the boosts with Tata's 2-piece giving equipment weight damage bonus, my ranged weapon giving ninjutsu damage bonus, my Batman giving me agility damage bonus, and my weapon giving me increased consecutive attacks, we maximize all possible boosts for the most damage output. Despite all that, however, damage felt a bit lackluster in Way of the Wise. Perhaps they tune enemy defense to counter kunai, as certainly some enemies take very little kunai damage, such as Sasuke, which how ironic, and Ogress and Hyakuya. So I tested and fiddled with things and figured out that attack times 2 damage from dash or evasion attacks, the new stat everyone and their sensei should be using in non-living weapon builds, actually affects kunai damage. Not only does it affect kunai damage, but it also doesn't de-trigger with kunai hits. Normally when using attack times 2 with a melee weapon, the buff will only double the damage of the first hit after the dash attack, then disappears until you do another dash attack. Well, for some reason, kunai doesn't deactivate it, meaning you get the attack times 2 boost for the whole 5 seconds or so it lasts, meaning all your kunai hits are doubled. And no, this doesn't clash with thrown weapon damage times 2, so essentially you're quadrupling your damage. If not without this, kunai is pretty meh in Way of the Wise, so I think it's very essential. Same goes for dash attack nullify damage. What it does is makes you immortal so long as you dash attack. The best part is you can have both at the same time. So these two stats are the best stats in the game right now, bar none. They are limited to ethereal weapons and gloves only, however, so you need to prioritize getting an ethereal weapon and gloves. Your weapon can actually roll both together at the same time, unlike gloves. However, I'm going to bring an upset for why you want to attack on gloves specifically, and why you may consider Enku as your main spirit instead of Cormorant. As I've told people who checked out my pinned comment on my Devastation Tonfa build, nearly every human boss, and it can also appear on some yokai bosses or red enemies, have a broken modifier called Weaken Melee Weapon. What this does is completely disables your weapon stats and your weapon set bonus when you're hit. I raged about it since Tonfa Gun, the best thing Tonfa had going for it, is made useless by this, but the same can be said for this setup or any setup, in that if you put all your eggs into your weapon and it gets disabled, you lose that times 2 attack and or nullify damage on top of your set bonus, which is why you have to use an Ega weapon instead of Scion Spear, since if your weapon is disabled, you only lose the Ega bonus, which is irrelevant for the most part, whereas if your spear was disabled, you lose that 19% thrust damage. Nullify damage also doesn't counter this debuff on you, so even if you take no damage, just being hit will cast the debuff on you, and there's no way to get rid of it besides dying, or running around and waiting for it to fade away. A workaround from losing Nullify or attack times 2 is having attack times 2 on gloves, and using Enku, the new DLC spirit which gives nullified damage from a dash attack. And with this setup, you won't ever have to face this problem and will always retain your immunity and double damage. So because of that, this is a multi-spirit build you'll change around depending on the encounter, but I'll talk about that later. Also, before I proceed, since I get this question asked a lot, dash attack is basically your sprint attack. So holding the sprint button, which is called dash in this game, so the X button, and moving forward and then using the attack, that's a dash attack. Keyword is holding down, as evasion attack is the one where you simply press X once in either direction to do an attack. That is evasion attack. But let's move on to my weapon. I no longer use Bloodstained Hatchet, since having to dash attack first nullifies the 50% CQC bonus for it, for your kunai. So you're going to want to farm for an ethereal ego weapon, which is no easy feat, since your best option is one of the worst stages, the 2 Ninja Master fight. What I recommend is getting ethereal gloves with attack times 2, using Enku for the nullified damage, dash attack Ginchio and then spam kunai till she's dead. Then focus on Honzo. If you do it the other way around, you're as good as dead, as Ginchio is a pain in the ass. So again, you want either Ega weapon as ethereal. It took me a super long time to get a 6 stat no inheritable. I've gotten 2 6 stats with inheritable, meaning I couldn't get 7 stats. This isn't mandatory though, as you only need 3 to 4 stats, that is attack from behind, consecutive attack, weaken torso, and then dash nullify and evasion attack times 2. The thing to note is the dash attacks themselves. If you go Kusa, be warned of its mid-stance dash attack. while the fastest, its trajectory is freaky since it propels you forward, oftentimes zooming you past normal sized enemies. We don't need to be that Sonic, we don't need to be that fast. In those cases I go low stance with Kusa, but Iga Sword has a much better mid stance dash attack, but at the cost of losing its stat since it already has a stat on it, which I think is familiarity damage bonus, which prevents you from getting consecutive attacks. But it's up to you which one you want to use. It's most likely dependent on which drops first for you. Don't worry about the weapon damage or upgrading, as you're never going to use your weapon for actual damage. For ranged weapons, Amaterasu is best in slot for both since you gain a free 640 life from having them. This is a luxury feature, not mandatory, as it will be hard to farm for. Then on both ranged weapons you want pierce damage ranged attack, as this affects Kunai, meaning if someone blocks you, you can still do some kind of damage to them. There were some other effects that are new, like Earn and Riddle on projectile hit, but from testing it doesn't affect Kunai, so I dropped it for equipment drop rate. Also, I believe damage towards whatever enemy affects your main weapon and Kunai damage, so put on the enemy you hate the most for that. Now for one of your ranged weapons, you want ninjutsu damage bonus A, and on the other, you want agility A. Reason for this is if you need to use Enku or Bunny, you can swap to the Agility A1, which will give you more damage boost than Ninjutsu, whereas using A or Kormari, it's the opposite since the Spirit comes with Agility A already. And now, for the sake of saving my breath, here's all the armor in one convenient screen that you can pause the video and copy the stats you need. Namely, you want at least 80% or higher thrown weapon damage times 2 on your gear, so 3 on your armor and then 1 on your charms, then the rest can be thrown weapon damage. Gloves can also roll shuriken and kunai damage on top of times 2, so get that too. You want tenacity on one of your pieces for the Marabashi farming tech clip I showed with leeching talisman, and depending on your level, you might want rate reduction 2 on a couple pieces to save points from having to put into stamina. Amrita absorption on helm needs to be movement speed or key recovery speed, as attack doesn't affect kunai. You're probably typing right now,
well, where do I get thrown weapon inheritables?
And the answer is, good luck. I got these from back when people rediscovered that New Game Plus Revenants still drop gear with the same stats on them as the original, so long as the weapons were 160 or below, and people flooded Death to the Bandits and Kyushu region on New Game Plus with lots of nice inheritables. Well, now it's probably deader than ever since most people are unwise now, and tempering kinda handles reforging problems for everything except kunai builds, so yeah, you can try getting it there, maybe help each other in the comments if you do have some to toss around, or just farm a crap load of gear and 1 or 2 inheritables will pop up eventually. And now, here are my stats. Don't freak out on the level, it's not mandatory. I'll splash the minimum requirements for the build on the right. If you're below 200, just get rid of Tatanashi's set until you can raise stamina high enough to wear it. You want Dex to 99 first, and then Skill, as those are the only things giving you damage. Also, you need 19 Strength, and probably the same for Body, because Ethereals are unforgeable, meaning you have to abide by the high requirements of the armor you find. Now for spirits, Air Kormari will give the most damage and gives you unlimited ninjutsu 20%, which combined with Shadow Round Talismans, conserves you more than enough kunai to take on bosses and some levels before having to use the shrine. Not much to talk about here, but I did do a damage comparison. Kormari did about 800 or more damage than Enku from behind, while Enku did about 200 or more damage from, well, not behind. Ginchio is the best secondary spirit always, and I use Ginchio for Marabashi luck farming since the masters are weak enough that you don't need to attack times 2 from dash attacks. And then lastly, you change to Enku as your main when needed if you find your weapon is getting disabled, so fights like the new Date trio fight. For clan, I'm actually still on patch 1.14, so I'm stuck with Tokugawa for my Devastator Tanpa build, but you probably want the Kusu clan that gives damage from behind, so you'll do more damage than me. I can't view the possible clans to really say if there's any other options, so let me know in the comments what you think is a good alternative, if there is one. Now, moving on to Omnio weapon passives, pause the video here to get the things you need. For Omnio, invest spare points into a Legion Talisman for the Marabashi tech. And finally, we move on to the ninja tree itself. Now, most of you should know by now how kunai builds work, so I'll skim through this stuff. Get all kunai and storm kunai. You can also get shuriken if you find yourself wasting too many kunai. As storm kunai is kinda only good against yokai bosses, it's less effective now considering all the human battles they added. So shuriken's there if you need it. Then you want shuriken shooter for faster throwing speed, and then thrown blade for more damage. For mystic arts, you actually want both. Concealment is used for damage, while enlightenment is good for speed running. You can switch between the two whenever you want, so it's good to have both options. Moving on, you want paralytic groundfire, my new favorite toy as shown in my Marabashi farm video and as seen in the clips. Great against humans like the Masters, Ganryu, and most others honestly. You can also get groundfire if you wanted. Then there's quick change, tiger running if you wanted, medicine man, and lastly ninja tool mastery to fit everything. And the rest of the points you can do whatever you want with it. The bonus stat dumps don't offer you any damage, so they're kind of pointless to get unless you want to use Kusa or Spear for attacking trash mobs. And that, my hidden leaf friends, is Hokage Uzumaki, the best ninja build to date. Kunai is powerful as usual, however I do think it has its hiccups. Notably, Hyakuagyo was a pain for this build, mainly due to Ogress, so I didn't include that clip. And well, it kills pretty slowly as far as going through a whole level and killing every enemy, whereas some melee weapons or living weapon builds will have no problem. So unsure if it's a top 3 build anymore, if even top 5. Still pretty fun, but like I said before, hard to gear for. For now though, I think I'll take a brief break on playing. Sort of drained my soul farming for this junk this fast, considering it's about a week after release. So gonna work on a new DLC review, which is just my opinion on it for people on the fence of buying it. But I will go in depth with many of the mechanics and stuff like best ethereal sets to use and whatnot, so look forward to that in the near future. But the next build I'm making after that is going to be a living weapon one, probably Odachi or Kusa. Gotta have me a living weapon powerhouse. Then after that, I'll probably do something cute with sword or dual swords. That's just my future plans, but anyways, rambling. I hope you guys enjoy the build, and I hope you enjoy this informative video. If you like this video, make sure to that like button, comment down below with any questions for Sensei, and subscribe for more Nioh epicness.